All of our equipment ready and our supplies ready in advance. So we always have the PDM to turn off the pod and to set and prime the new one. I always have extra alcohol pads, and I usually open them up in advance, or at least a couple of them, so they're ready. In case I need it, I have something called Skin Tack, and it comes in wipes or in this version with a little cotton ball to help it stick down. I mostly use this during the summer or if it's going to be swimming, and I think there's a chance the pod may come off. I keep either baby oil or eye makeup remover if I'm having a hard time getting the pod off or the grips off of his leg. I always have my insulin out. I usually use Humalog. Somebody sort of gifted us with some Humalog pens, and so I'm trying to use the last of this, but typically they'll have you use it from the vial, not the pen.
Yes.
This is what's called a grip, or some kind of an adhesive bandage to help hold the pod on. This is not necessary for everybody, but if you have an active toddler or they swim a lot or they're hot and sweaty, this can be really useful. Or if they like long baths, this can be useful to help keep it down, right? He's saying yes. I usually have some little cotton pads with me if I'm going to use either oil or makeup remover to help take this off, just in case. And he has the wet washcloth, which he's going to show you here. This is a Mickey Mouse wet washcloth, but anyone will do. And if I'm taking the pod off and he didn't just come out of the bath, I put this on there to start getting it ready and wet, because it's easier to take off when it's wet.
Is it hot?
It's just warm water.
Okay.
And sometimes I'll squeeze a little bit on there, because the wetter it is, the easier it is to take off. That's why he's sitting on a towel. But oftentimes I just let it sit there, right? We're just gonna let it soak and get kind of ready. Okay, and I just washed my hands before I started this.
I showed you this when it's ready to take off my pod.
Oh,
So
good.
when you change a pod, and I'll tell you this, you do it after the top of the hour, because that hourly bolus, or excuse me, that hourly basal dose that he gets comes at the top of the hour. So you do it after that, so you don't miss that.
And this,
It does help your pod get off, but you have to keep it on your leg, baby. So I always start by cleaning off the vial or whatever I'm going to use in
helps
this
me
case.
take off
Use
my
the pen.
pod and here
I know,
place
baby.
place.
So I clean the top of that off, because there are multi-use vials. I pull the syringe, and this comes in the kit. I pull the syringe back to the minimum fill line, which is 85 units of insulin. So regardless of how much insulin you use per day, you will always waste insulin with a kid. Because it requires, in order for the pod to work, that it have a certain amount of insulin in it. Insulet, which is the company that makes Omnipod, is working on a different version which requires less insulin in it, but for now this is kind of what we're stuck with. So you do waste a lot of insulin.
Like how much? Half of it?
He uses about 8 units a day.
And how many is in the thing?
Minimum fill of 85, and he changes it every 2 days. So he goes through 16 units, so I waste about 50 to 60 units.
Oh my.
Every single pod change. It's a lot, it adds up quite a bit. Now, it's normally not this hard to pull up insulin, but when you pull up from a pen, there's a lot of resistance, so it does take me a little bit to pull it up. But I'll show you when you pull it from a vial, it's pretty fast. I'm just doing this for the sake of showing you it can be pulled up from a pen, but it is a little harder. Now you'll see when I pull, from a vial, for instance, it's not as hard. So I'm gonna use a new vial to demonstrate that. So you pop the top off.
Of course, my pod is not working.
I know, your pod is not working. And then I take a new alcohol pad. Careful of the needle, of course. Normally you don't do from multiple vials or pens, so this is just a one-step kind of thing. So you pull it up here. You pull to the fill line, and it's a sterile system, so you can pump the air back in there, or sometimes people will pull out and do that just to get rid of, there's like a bubble in there, but you don't necessarily have to, because the pod automatically primes all of the air out of the insulin set for you. So so this is 85 units, and everybody's gonna be really quiet so you can hear that this makes a noise. It makes those 2 beeps, and that's how you know you've filled to the minimum fill volume. I always recap my needles because I know that it's a sterile needle, and if I stick myself, it's not the end of the world. But you should be careful whenever recapping any kind of a needle. And of course, set it out of the way. Georgia, can you sit down, baby? So now it comes time to prime this. And the reason we prime it is to get rid of all of the extra air in it so that when it delivers a bolus, it's delivering full insulin, not air. Not because the air would necessarily be dangerous under the skin per se, but he would get an improper dose. So the first thing I do is I go to the PDM, and it's always going to ask you to acknowledge who it is, because some people will have more than one child that they need to, they may have a PDM for. So I go down here and select more actions, and I click select, change pod, and it will ask me to confirm because it's going to deactivate the current pod. So it has to be somewhat close to the pod to deactivate it. It's okay, baby. It's an old one, so it's okay for you to put that. So now it has deactivated this old pod. So this pod, regardless of whether or not it's still in his skin, will not give him any insulin anymore. It's done. And I'll take it off. I usually take it off second because that's actually the harder part of this. And then it asks you to click next. And then it says, no active pod. Would you like to activate a pod now? So I say yes.
Oops. Sorry about that.
And then it says fill a new pod. And after filling, you listen for the 2 beeps. And then you click next, and it's going to prime it. And it has to be touching and located to the right of the PDM. So I set the PDM down. Yeah, baby. And I put the pod to the right of it, and now it's priming. It's pumping all of the air out of it. You set the one there, baby. That one's empty anyway. And this takes a minute or 2. Now, oftentimes during this, I will go ahead and prep his leg. Kiara, could you grab me an extra alcohol pad? I end up using more than, I usually use 3 or 4, but I'm gonna use a 5th today. Can I see you? I see your other leg? Can I see your other leg? Thank you. Now when you look at Jai's legs, you'll notice a lot of different little bumps, and if you feel them, they do feel, you can feel there's a little bit of a hard spot there. That does go away, it takes a little bit. Similar to if you had a vaccine, you might have a little bump in the leg. It goes away. Okay, baby. Remember, we're not going to touch your leg while I prep it. So I try to look for a site that doesn't have a little bump because the absorption is going to be different in those areas. Okay, so, hands. You take that one? Hands up though, baby, okay? So I'm going to clean your leg, okay? So I clean his leg, and I do so in a circle. And I always use 2. No, baby, that one's not clean. Hands up, remember? Hands up for this part. Okay, thank you. And then I clean again, trying to not track any of the dirty area through that. And I give it a second to dry a little bit. Now, keep your hands up. Now, this is the point, I'm gonna show you for the sake of argument, if you wanted to do it and you wanted it to stay down a little bit more. If I want the pod to stay on because he's going to swim or it's going to be hot, I will use skin tack, either in this version or in the version with the ball. This one's actually easier to work with in some ways. And I'll just do a quick little swipe of the area. This one's kind of a little dry to hold it down, or you can do one of these numbers where you take just a tiny little bit of this one, and it is sticky, so be aware. Sometimes if you're doing gloves, you'll take them off at this point. But I'll just do just a tiny little bit to help it stay down, and then I just kind of let it dry because it is very sticky. Now this is going to keep this pod down a lot, and it does make my hands a little sticky. So now the PDM is telling me to get this set ready, and so the first thing it's going to tell me to do is pull off this plastic tab. So I pull it off. Don't touch, baby. Hands up, hands up. And then I pull both of these off. Now it's much easier to start both sides first. If you start one and pull it off, it's very difficult to pull the other. So you always start one, start the other, have them up, and then you pull that off. And then this is the set. The cannula is going to come out here. So I know that's where I want to put in a clear area, like right about there. Good job, Jai. And then I stick the adhesive down. Then the next thing I do, because I know I've got a minute or so to do this, or actually an 8-second countdown, is I click next, because I know I've checked, I know the cannula is good, or I know the thing is good.
Oh, would you squeeze my pod?
And then I click next. I will squeeze your pod, and then it asks me to start, and there's an 8-second countdown, and he knows I have to squeeze his leg for this part, and I apply a little bit of pressure to make sure that when it gets to the 8-second countdown, that the cannula goes where it's supposed to go, inside. If you don't pinch up the skin when they're little, it will not end up where it needs to be. It may be too shallow. Good job. He did such a good job. Yay! I know. And so he did a great job. And then I put what's called, some kind of a grip or an adhesive. It does ask you at this point too, is the pod, it says the pod is active, and it wants you to make sure the cannula is properly inserted. So how you can tell that, and it's very difficult to tell on a video, there is a little pink window here, and there is an arrow that has now entered into that window. So I don't know if you can see, there's a little dark arrow in the middle of that window right there where it has advanced, and that is a sign that the cannula is in place. You can also check, you know, there's a viewing window back here, which is incredibly difficult to see. But if you get really close with a flashlight, you can see there's a little blue cannula in the middle of that center, or the center of that viewing window, and it is inserted in the skin. I have a very difficult time seeing it myself. I'll probably need readers to be able to do that soon. So then I put the grip down here. Careful not to occlude or cover up the viewing window, because the viewing window is important to check and make sure periodically that the pod looks like it's okay and it's not leaking insulin into that area. Sorry, I didn't do the best job, the prettiest job of getting that one on there, because my hands are very sticky from using the skin
I want
tech.
special water.
Okay, you can have some special water when we're all finished. And so that pretty much, you know, concludes the placement portion of this. And then now I have to just try to remove the pod on this side. And sometimes Jai can do it on his own, right, baby? Sometimes you do it on your own. I try to get it as wet as possible. You get a little water here and there. It's useful to do this part after a bath sometimes, especially if they've soaked for a while, because in the bath you can take the entire grip off itself. A lot of my you know, acquaintances and friends who wear a pod do not use a grip, even ones who, you know, do triathlons and swim and sweat. I think adults are a little bit, it's easier for them to make sure that their pod stays on a little bit more easily.
Don't take it off.
Well, we're gonna use a little bit of eye makeup remover this time to help, because this has some oil in it. Yeah, and then we gotta change your diaper because it's very wet.
I'll help you.
You're gonna help me? Okay.
I'm fine.
Okay, I'm gonna let this one soak, and I'll put a little bit on here and you can help me rub it, okay? Can you help Mama rub it? You rub on the sides, and I'm gonna rub here. You rub with that one, okay? His school likes to use baby oil, and they have pretty good success with it. I tend to get a little impatient because it's already past bedtime and I want to get it off. So, and it's like any Band-Aid. I'm of the opinion that the faster you take it off, the better. But he doesn't always agree with me on that one. So I try to kind of rub it and get it started. And oftentimes once I get it started, I'm just going to get up under it, okay? I'll just kind of get up under it a little bit, and you can kind of clean around it. This part is useful too because it does leave a sticky residue, you know, on his leg. And so if he's wearing pants, he'll get little lint things that stick on there. You want to use this one instead?
Yeah.
That one's got a lot on it. Okay, I'm going to use this one too. Can you get the other side for me, please? Good job, it's okay. I'm just cleaning, just cleaning. You want to take the rest off because it's going to pull off really easily. You want to take it off, the rest of it off? You want to show them how you take it off? Pull this one. You want to pull? You show them how you can pull it off yourself.
I have to.
Yeah, you do a good job. And if you pull from that side, it's probably a little easier. Good job. Good job.
Good job, buddy.
Yay.
Nice job, Jai.
And then I try to go over it with a little bit of something, but you'll find that stuff sticks to it regardless of what you do. On that one. Okay, well, we're going to take the pod off now. Do you want to show them how you take off the pod? No, let's not spill it because it is very messy. It's hard to clean this up. Oil gets sticky.
On this.
There's already some on there, babe. Look, it's all wet. Do you want to take your pod off?
Yeah.
Look, it's already coming off. Do you want to show them? I'll get it started for you.
I will show them.
You want to show them? You want to get it a little wetter too? Sometimes it's easier when the wetter it is, the easier it is to take off. Although with the oil, it gets a little. Okay, you want to show them how you take it off?
Yeah.
Okay. Mess over.
Keep it off.
You got it?
Yeah, I got it.
You got it. You want to show them how it comes off yourself?
Yeah.
Do you need a little help?
No,
No, you got it? You sure?
I got
I can get it wet for you. If that helps you get a little wet. Let's get a little wet underneath it. Look,
Look,
it's off. Good job. Yay!
that's my pod.
That's the
Good
pod.
job.
So this is what it looks like when it comes off. His cannula is a little, sticking a little bit to the side, but it otherwise looks good. Sometimes I squeeze it afterwards just to see if it was still administering insulin, because I suspect this pod was not great. I think he may have, I don't know if he took a long bath yesterday, but yeah, see when I push right there, I can make insulin come out of it. So it was still, it was not completely occluded, but occasionally you'll take them off and they'll have a kink here or a blood clot or something, and those may be days when your numbers aren't quite as good. But you did an awesome job, Jai. Can you say hi to our friends?
Hi.
Say hi. Bye.
Say bye.